All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having an incredible weekend. We were planning on taking the weekend off, but the Knicks and Raptors have other plans as OG Anunoby is headed to the Knicks. We're going to be breaking down that deal from the perspective of both teams. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. It'd mean a lot to me if you guys would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements or the film threads that I do from time to time. And last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can keep hitting them throughout the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So the full trade details. The Knicks get OG Anunoby, Malachi Flynn, and Precious Achiuwa. And the Raptors get RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, and 1 second-round pick. Not too much when you really look at it. And that's, first of all, why I love this deal for the Knicks. They didn't give away anything of real franchise-altering value, right? RJ Barrett, in my opinion, is a better player than his reputation at this point. I think the pendulum has swung a little too far with him. There's so much focus on his offensive limitations that people are forgetting, like, he's actually a really good athlete that's strong, physical, and a pretty good defensive player. That said, the offensive limitations are real. He just hasn't developed in terms of his skill set the way you'd hope for a player of his pedigree. He's a good shooter when he has like all day to get into his muscle memory. But if you can disrupt that even to the slightest extent, it falls apart. You can see that in the numbers this year. 47% field goal percentage on unguarded catch and shoot jump shots. Drops to 18% when he's guarded and 27% off the dribble. So again, you just look at it from the standpoint of resource management. He's a good defensive player that is a bad offensive player on and off the ball. So if we piece all of that together and you factor in that he's making in the mid 20 million range, it's just a tough, chunk of your cap space given the amount of production you're getting. You'd be better off taking his usage and giving it to more efficient players, and then in the future looking for another athletic two guard that can fill that position. First of all, you've got a bunch of those guys between Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, and Dante DiVincenzo, right? And you're just better off giving those guys more minutes, focusing them on defense, and then playing a real three, because that's the other part of this too, is RJ Barrett was playing the three a lot of the time, and he's not big enough or good enough offensively to really be a dominant, starting three for a really good team in this league. So again, RJ Barrett, better than his reputation, but a poor use of cap space. So I looked at him as like basically a loss the Knicks could afford. Now, Immanuel Quickley is going to be the one a lot of Knicks fans are going to be really sad to lose in this deal. And don't get me wrong, Immanuel Quickley is really good. And the Raptors are really going to like him, especially because they are so devoid of talent in their backcourt relative to most teams in the league. He's good on and off the ball, 1.03 points per possession in pick and roll, 1 point per possession in ISO, 57% effective field goal percentage on catch and shoot jump shots, 52% effective field goal percentage on pull-up jump shots, has a nasty floater, 59% on high volume. And he's actually, I think Immanuel Quickley is actually a decent point of attack defender. He's just a little bit small, right? That said, all of that put together, he's still a redundancy. Jalen Brunson's just a better player than him. And everything we've talked about on this show about, like, if you want to be a really seriously good basketball team, I don't think you can, in your core lineups, play two small guards together. And time again, we've seen moments where the Knicks are going into a fourth quarter and Immanuel Quickley's cooking to start the fourth, and then you have to go away from him at the end of the game. It's kind of like what we've been talking about with Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. It's like, it's not so much whether or not D'Angelo Russell is one of the Lakers' top 5 players, because I think he is. I think he's their 5th best player. But you can't play him alongside Austin Reeves because they're both below average athletes. And, we look, and this is going to be a big theme in this show today, this position, basketball has become positionless, in my opinion, but it's not role-less. I think the ideal form of a modern basketball team, in my opinion, as I've said many times on the show, is a skill guard, an athlete guard, a perimeter forward, a bigger, more interior-oriented forward, and then an athletic center that can defend in multiple coverages, right? And if you look at kind of the layout of the team with the Knicks, it's like Immanuel Quickley's probably one of their 5 best players, but he's a skill guard just like Jalen Brunson. He is a good athlete, but he's not a big, strong enough athlete to be the two next to Jalen Brunson, right? So it's a roster imbalance. So as good as Immanuel Quickley is, and as sad as I know most Knicks fans are going to be to see him go, I looked at him as another guy on that roster that is a redundancy and therefore someone that is, not a devastating loss to the future of the franchise for them to give up. And then in addition to all of that, they only gave up 1 second-round pick. Honestly, I'm stunned with how famously stingy the Raptors are, that the Knicks got this deal done without giving up a first-round pick. Now, the intel is, I saw a report this morning that apparently OG Anunoby and his team have behind the scenes been kind of telling everybody like, hey, my next deal is going to be $40+ million a year unless I'm in New York. And so maybe that did some to dampen the interest in him around the league. I also wouldn't be surprised if just in general the fear of a long-term deal surrounding OG Anunoby and some of his injury history played a role there. But whatever it was, this ended up being the price, right? All I want for the holidays this year is some NBA action. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5. An instant dub just for you guys. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. First and foremost, what I love for the Knicks is, to me, it is a significant positional need that they addressed without having to give up too much. Now, how is OG Anunoby a positional need? Like we talked about, I look at Jalen Brunson as the skill guard. Now, without Immanuel Quickley, you kind of look at Evan Mobley as a guy, or not Evan Mobley, Evan Fournier as a guy that kind of slots back into that backup point guard role. In that 2-3 spot now, OG Anunoby is a surefire, obvious, above-average starter at the 3. He slots in there. We're going to talk about his individual skill set in a minute. Then you have 3 guys that you look at as like, one's going to start the 2, and the other 2 will basically spell at the 2 and the 3, and that's Josh Hart, that's Quentin Grimes, that's Dante DiVincenzo, right? And so that kind of balances things out. Then at the forward position, you've got Julius Randle. Precious Achiuwa is a guy who can play both the power forward position and as a backup center. That's going to be immensely valuable now with Mitchell Robinson being out of the lineup. The one thing that's a huge bummer here is this just would be so much more interesting if it was like, okay, we're going down with Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. And unfortunately, as a result of the injuries, it's just not an option, at least within the scope of this season. That said, OG Anunoby is a very good perimeter defensive player. To be honest, he just represents a player that the Knicks just don't have on the roster, which is a big forward that is quick on the perimeter. They don't really have this type of guy. OG Anunoby 6'8" with shoes on, a 7'2" wingspan. He's an excellent defensive player. He can guard multiple positions on the ball. He actually led the league in steals last year. Don't forget about the slotting element. A lot of the issues for the Knicks defensively over the years, especially in high leverage moments, is they just haven't really had that primary point of attack guy. And so what you end up doing is taking good point of attack defenders, not great ones, but good ones, and giving them high leverage assignments. You guys might remember the Miami Heat series last year. It's like Quentin Grimes is guarding Jimmy Butler. And like Quentin Grimes is a solid perimeter defensive player, but Jimmy Butler is one of the best players in the league, right? By virtue of OG Anunoby being able to take all those high leverage assignments, it basically slots guys like Quentin Grimes, Dante DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart into more achievable defensive roles. I think that's going to play a huge role. And then even as we just look at the Eastern Conference, like you got to go through Giannis. You got to go through Jason Tatum. You got to go through Jimmy Butler. Not only are those guys, small forward, power forwards, but they're also big, strong, small forward, power forwards. And OG Anunoby is about as good an option as you can find in the league to slot against those guys because of his physical frame, right? So it balances out the athletic profile of the lineup, gives you a primary point of attack defender. Now, on offense, for starters, he's just a way better shooter than RJ Barrett. 59% effective field goal percentage on catch and shoot jumpers, good when he's guarded or open. This is the opposite of the RJ Barrett thing, right? 60% effective field goal percentage when guarded, 57% effective field goal percentage when open. He converts spot-up possessions at 1.07 points per possession, which is above average. Just for comparison, RJ Barrett converts spot-up possessions at 0.9 points per 100 possessions. So almost 20% better at converting those off-ball possessions. That's going to be a huge weapon. How many times for you Knicks fans in the last few weeks have you seen a play end with RJ Barrett catching the ball in the corner and missing a 3? You've just made a significant upgrade in that play finishing position. Now, he's not very good on the ball. Only ran 72 pick and rolls and ISOs, including passes this year, leading to just 54 points. But he won't need to do too much of that. You're going to be giving a lot of that RJ Barrett usage to more efficient players. I think one of the things that they can do in a lot of cases is run two-man game with OG Anunoby with Jalen Brunson and expect teams to switch that. And one of the things that OG Anunoby has done well on the ball is beat switches, particularly with the pass. I actually watched all of his post-ups this morning. The Raptors were really deliberate about posting him when he had a smaller defender on him, and he was consistently drawing double teams and making good plays out of it. As a matter of fact, OG Anunoby post-ups, including passes, have been worth 1.07 points per possession this year. So I look at him as more of a play finisher for the Knicks, like a significant upgrade on both ends of the floor. Now, does it make you as good as Boston or Milwaukee? No, but it does maintain your flexibility. So in summation, here's why I love the deal for the Knicks. I'm a big believer that you don't really push your chips in, and I mean throw all your draft picks and do whatever you got to do to get a player, unless you're getting a top-tier superstar, right? Or you already have a top-tier superstar and you're looking for a secondary star. And when I say top-tier superstar, I mean one of the top 7 or 8 players in the league, right? And that's the thing. If you're the Clippers and you need Paul George to get Kawhi, makes sense, right? You have Luka Doncic in Dallas. You go after a guy like Kyrie, even if you have to overpay. Why? Because Luka's a top-tier superstar. And when you slot a top-tier superstar next to a legitimate number 2, you create these small, achievable other roles. And then you're able to do what Dallas did last summer, and you can just quickly retool with one sign and trade and a bunch of veteran minimum contracts, and suddenly you look like one of the better teams in the Western Conference. But it only makes sense to do so if you already have a top-tier guy or if you're going after a top-tier guy. So when I see names, one of the advantages is Jalen Brunson. We all knew he was good in Dallas, but he turned out to be way better than we expected here with the Knicks, right? As we talk about, should the Knicks go after Donovan Mitchell or should the Knicks go after Zach LaVine? One of the reasons why I've said no this season is Jalen Brunson's just better than those guys. He just is. So you already have your number 2. So the next step is to try to get that top-tier superstar. And the only way to do that is to, 1, have the assets to do so, which the Knicks do. I saw something this morning. I think they have 8 first-round picks they can trade, 4 of their own and 4 of other teams. So they have the assets to make a superstar trade. Step 2 is make yourself desirable for a superstar. Right? You have to demonstrate competency. You have to demonstrate a winning environment. You have to appeal to superstars. This is a big step in that direction, right? Now you can, in the future, you can do 2 things. You can be competent now. I don't know about you guys. I'm excited to watch Jalen Brunson, a guy who's hooping his ass off this year, try to beat Boston, try to beat Milwaukee, try to beat Philly, flanked by OG Anunoby, flanked by Julius Randle in a really physical front line. I'm excited to see that. That's going to be fun Knicks basketball, and they're still headed in the right direction towards the inevitable superstar trade that'll happen in the future. So I just absolutely love this deal for the Knicks. I know they're going to be sad to lose Immanuel Quickley, but I think this was the ideal type of deal that improves the team on both ends of the floor in the short term while maintaining that flexibility. On the Raptors front, like I said, I'm surprised to see OG went for so little, but I do think those factors that I mentioned earlier played a role. The Raptors' biggest weakness from a personnel standpoint is the guard position. I think Immanuel Quickley, who's a deadly off-ball shooter and actually a pretty high-level shot creator, is going to be a really useful guard to play significant minutes alongside Scotty Barnes. And then RJ Barrett back in Canada is cool. I don't love the fit of RJ Barrett alongside a team that struggles with perimeter shooting. That said, I mean, it's a position for him, a change of scenery. It's a position for him. He's going to get some really high-quality looks playing off Scotty Barnes, too. It's a position for him to revitalize his career. It does feel like Toronto's headed towards a rebuild, and I don't love this deal for them, but it's tough to judge the rebuild until it's completely finished. There's going to be other trades. Don't be surprised if Pascal Siakam gets moved. Don't be surprised if Dennis Schroeder gets moved. Don't be surprised if Jakob Poeltl gets moved, right? So all eyes are going to be moving on to the other players on this Raptors roster. but I'm going to reserve judgment on their rebuild until all the deals have been made. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. I'm going to take the rest of the weekend off and New Year's Day, so I will see you guys on Tuesday, barring a Siakam trade in the next couple of days.